So we are finished with the official presentations. So we have some time for general discussions. Could you go to the last slide? Put it in. Thanks. Okay, so we don't have any fixed resolution or fixed finalized sentences for making recommendations as the conference material. So I hope you will help us to put together some thoughts. Which we talked with some colleagues that it would be really good for the future to put together some update on the global status of the species. Of course, we can recognize the increasing populations and especially in the eastern populations, the increasing survey efficiency and this modeling which was mentioned by Igor, which is very promising. Also, we should identify those gaps in the knowledge where further population surveys are needed on the breeding populations. We can conclude some remarks on the dispersal studies in several parts of the distribution area. We could see that in the last 5 years, these kind of studies were very quickly increasing, and many new results was shown in the presentations. We can conclude some remarks on the threats. Of course, the main threats are known for several decades, like electrocution, persecution, habitat degradation, collisions, and all others. But there were mentions on some special newly emerging threats like wind farms, or which was not specifically mentioned, but for example in Hungary it's also an issue. The solar power stations are increasing, which could have a significant coverage in the natural habitats already. So more or less these are the topics which we can talk about, and we would also welcome some proposals for the location of the next conference. And of course, it's also an open question, but I hope that this link between these eagles of the Palearctic conference series and the Imperial Eagle conference can be held in the future also. So in 5 years, we could organize it again together. So more or less these are the main things, and I would start with the breeding population. You know that in the previous conferences, usually the global status of the Imperial Eagle was summarized and was published first in the International Action Plan. Then it was published after the 1998 conference in the journal Aquila in Hungary. And after the 2008 conference, which was in Bulgaria, it was published in the Acta Zoologica Bulgarica, where Dimitar Demerjiev was the first author of this publication, and this was the last update as a publication of the species. So it would be very necessary to make such an update quite recently. My proposal for the recommendation is to put something like this, that of course some of the range countries were presenting their results in this conference, but we should contact the remaining countries, and we should put together a summary in which of course this kind of models and estimations of which was shown by Igor could help a lot to get a new knowledge on the global status, population size and trends of the species. Are there any comments on this idea?
Ну, идея-то правильная, да. Надо делать сводку и закрывать, пытаться пробелы, которые есть, собственно. Вот я их обрисовал. У нас фактически нет публикаций по Узбекистану, где могильник точно есть, но мы даже вообще не представляем, что там и как там с ним. Какие-то отдельные разрозненные находки, в основном это гнезда на ЛЭП около трасс. Все. И там 2-3 гнезда известных начинки. Соответственно, нет информации вообще по Туркмении. А в Туркмении он тоже есть, потому что мы на самой границе Казахстана, на туркменской территории, за там 50 метров от казахской границы знаем гнездо на чинке Капланкыра. Есть он на Чулюнгыре, а значит, он и дальше идет на юг по чинкам. Вот. Учитывая, что в Альборзе сохраняется группировка, оттуда есть как минимум там кадры бедвотчеров с птиц около гнезда и с гнездовым материалом, но никаких публикаций, доступных на английском, там нету оттуда. Вот. И совершенно непонятно, что происходит с могильником в Китае, потому что на северо-западе Китая могильник определенно гнездится, потому что вокруг сосредоточены крупнейшие группировки в России и Казахстане. Поэтому, а в Китае то же самое абсолютно, та же территория, соответственно, там должна быть группировка могильника, просто ее не может не быть, но мы ничего не знаем об этом. Поэтому вот надо акцентироваться особо на тех странах, из которых нет информации. Это Узбекистан, Туркмения, Иран, ну и Китай. Вот. С Монголией тоже ситуация не очень однозначна, потому что вот мы работали там до 2010 года плотно по местам гнездования могильника. Тогда, когда могильник был вот после 2002-2003 годов, ну, практически полностью уничтожен, мы находили только старые гнезда. Но сейчас ситуация могла измениться. Соответственно, по Монголии, поскольку нет публикаций вообще по могильнику, но туда надо инициировать, видимо, какие-то экспедиции, исследования и проверять те территории, на которых достоверно этот вид гнездился до 2002-2003 годов. Потому что территория для могильника там, она такая же абсолютно, как Тувинская. В Туве сейчас могильник восстанавливает численность, и я думаю, такое же явление происходит и в Монголии, но мы об этом ничего не знаем.
Thanks a lot. Any other comments, questions? Also, you can use the opportunity to ask any information about the presenters.
Can I ask the presenters the next questions, which is regarding the inter-specific relationship between the Saker falcons and the Eastern Imperial Eagle? Are they found some competence, some fight between those species, some fight for the nesting place, or the direct competition for food species like the European sussex or things like that? Thank you very much.
Sorry, we couldn't see the Zoom in the room, so could you introduce yourself?
Hello, did anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, just we didn't know who you are.
My name is Nicolae Pârlog. I'm an ornithologist from Romania. I thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss about this species. And I want to ask all the speakers before me if they knew something about the interspecific relation between the Saker falcon and the Eastern Imperial Eagle as nest competitions, prey competitions, all these kind of relations.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will get back to this issue. Just first, we finalize the thoughts about this global population summary. I wrote down your question and we will get back to this.
Thanks. Excuse me. One thing about Mongolia is that there are quite a few very good raptor biologists there, and I'm not sure we need an expedition so much as just a collaboration, and that could involve visits and things like that. But there are some very good people there who would be good to work with and who may already know something about the situation for the species.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. I think such a global update could be a really useful tool to precisely delineate those areas which should be on the focus. And of course, it's just a methodological question: who will go there and who will pay the bills and so on. But at least we should have the areas known.
Ну, на самом деле, мы как бы вот контактируем со многими монгольскими коллегами. То есть мы контактируем вот в Западной Монголии, Олег Горошко работает по Восточной. Мы контактируем с немецкими орнитологами, которые работают в Монголии. И фактически у всех очень мало информации о могильнике. Не потому что, скажем так, могильника там нет, а потому что территории, которые перспективны для гнездования могильника, посещаются крайне редко орнитологами, потому что их работа, и вот наша в том числе, что скрывать-то, сконцентрирована в основном в других местообитаниях, на других видах. Потому что в первую очередь там мы обращаем внимание на дрофу, балобана и орел-могильник, который гнездится в лесостепи, в горной лесостепи, он выпадает фактически из наших исследований целевых по другим видам. То есть для него надо организовывать, ну, планировать по-другому мероприятия по его выявлению и учету.
Thank you. Any other comments on this, some kind of a global update?
Just a question, I mean, in terms of methodology and etc., how do you plan to present both numbers and distribution? Because what Igor showed was very sophisticated and very nice, and I think there should be kind of a unified methodology to also present both numbers and distributions. And maybe when trying to combine all data together to check what has been already recently published, like the European Breeding Bird Atlas, where they have another methodology applied. And maybe you can start from over there just to decide which method to use.
Yeah, I think we should set up a group of experts who are interested in to be as a lead author or lead expert in this issue. Of course, this group of experts will contact all the national contacts and all the experts whom we know that works with Imperial Eagle, but we will need a smaller group who can efficiently work on the methodology. Of course, Igor has the largest database, and we can find out the way how to unify our databases, in what spatial scale, what kind of information should we collect. We should find something like a good medium resolution, which is detailed enough, but not so detailed that we will lose many people because they will have no time to deal with it. So something like that. I think it's not the matter of this conference to decide, but it would be good if those experts who would like to take part in the planning already, not just in the publication, but in the planning, they should contact Igor or me, and we will go forward. Of course, the Bulgarian team will be definitely in the planning, I hope. No detailed plans. It depends on the countries also.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Я бы добавил еще, что, в принципе, да, можно унифицировать методику, но вот мне кажется, самое оптимальное и простое для всех бы было просто выработать единый подход к сеточному картированию, потому что оно достаточно наглядно и просто отображает ситуацию. Вот. Просто подходы к тому же сеточному картированию тоже могут быть разные, и просто их надо унифицировать для всех стран ареала и собирать информацию по единой сетке, как говорится, едиными способами. Тогда Мы для каждой ячейки будем знать, насколько она обследована, насколько хорошо там проведены учеты, и в принципе этой информации будет вполне достаточно для того, чтобы понимать вообще, что происходит с видом. Вот у нас, мы сейчас уже собираем по многим видам базу, и у нас фактически в полуавтоматическом режиме выводится по каждой ячейке сетки информация о том, сколько там гнезд известно, насколько полно учеты проведены, на какой площади от этой ячейки, и сколько в этой ячейке площадь мест обитаний, пригодных для этого вида, и сколько прогнозируется гнездящихся пар. Мы, правда, работаем не у нас очень большая площадь ячейки. То есть я понимаю, что в Европе могут люди работать с ячейками 5 на 5 километров. Вот. Если мы нашу территорию, Россия, Казахстан, раздробим на такую сетку, у нас будет очень такое большое месиво квадратиков, с которым будет очень сложно работать. Поэтому вот надо понимать еще то, что для Европы нормален более такой хороший масштаб 5 на 5 километров. Для Казахстана, России это нереально просто. Но все равно унифицировать надо. Какой-то, в средний компромисс прийти по тем же размерам сетки. И как ее делать? У нас она вот градусная, например, но лучше, чтобы сопоставлять площади именно ячеек, лучше сетку метрическую делать. Но вообще это вот надо, да. Кто хочет, давайте это просто в почте обсуждать. Вот можно писать мне, можно Мартину, и мы обсудим, и можем включить любых специалистов, которые проявят интерес в это обсуждение, мне кажется, да?
Технически по ячейкам не целесообразно ли унифицировать ячейки с теми, которые применялись в атласе гнездящихся птиц Европы, и в России ту же самую работу делали, европейской части России? То есть распространить ту же сетку?
Можно распространить ту же сетку, но как бы работа с ней будет проблематична в России, потому что, я работаю с сетками уже сколько лет, и когда она, в общем, бьется пополам, то есть по долготе, понимаете, что вот идет смещение ячеек, потому что площадь меняется. То есть у нас же, земля-то эллипс, а ячейка метрическая. С ней в этом смысле очень сложно работать на таком пространстве от, допустим, Центральной Европы до Дальнего Востока. Поэтому, можно, но сложно. В общем, надо что-то, унифицировать. Но вот сетка Меркатора, которая для Европы сделана, она подходит для Европы. А вот если брать Европу и Азию, это уже очень сложно получается, да.
Thanks. So we should find out the technical details for that, but the aim seems to be welcomed, if I'm right. Okay, so the second larger topic which we raised during our discussions are the dispersal thing, and I was really impressed by the work which was done by the community working on the Egyptian vultures internationally, and they published some papers in the last years about summarizing all the satellite tracking efforts throughout the distribution range of the species, and I think such an approach would be really, really useful for the imperial eagle as well. There are many studies. Of course, it doesn't hamper the publication of the local studies in details, but to get a clear picture for the whole globe would help a lot to understand the species, the connections between the populations, really the whole meta-population system, which was partly shown by Igor. It could be very well shown by the dispersal movements of the juvenile birds as well, or even by the adults. So this would be another suggestion to do a similar international summary on these satellite tracking studies. Which one more topic in this is, for example, the status of the populations, which is usually handled as a black and white situation if a population is resident or migratory, and as we In previous books, usually the Caucasus was the limit between the migrating and the resident populations, but now today we heard from Rinur that the Dagestan population is also seems to be resident, at least partially. On the other hand, the Georgian population, based on our satellite tracking results, with Georgian colleagues, seems to be partially migratory. So it's much more like a gradient. Even some birds in the Pannonian Basin migrate. So this would be really a very interesting phenomenon of the populations, that what proportion of the juveniles or the adults are migrating. So several such general questions could be answered in a global scale. So if you have any suggestions for that, I would suggest something similar methods to set up a group of experts who will lead the process. And then, of course, all the experts who did any kind of tracking on imperial eagles must be contacted. And I hope everybody will be ready to cooperate in such a good initiation. Any comments on this idea? Stoicho.
Of course, we support it, and it's a shame that Egyptian vulture get more attention and better publications, so we have to catch up.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a big agreement. Silence means agreement. Yeah. Okay. So we will use the word of the conference on this initiation again. Okay, the third topic was about the threats. We can say something about the threats. Of course, the main threats, unfortunately, remains the same, although its effect on the species, fortunately, was mitigated in many cases, like, for example, the persecution in the Pannonian Basin or the electrocution in many parts of the distribution area. Do you think that any particular threat should be mentioned, any particular country should be mentioned? Because of course you can use these conference resolution or recommendation as a tool in your country also. So for example, if you feel that such a recommendation can help you in lobbying for a particular conservation action, and the community agrees, then please let us know and we will try to include it. Yes.
Yes, I think nobody at the moment described the threats related to climate change and all the consequences that related to the climate change. I know that wind farm and solar power are the new threats. However, for long-term stating the climate change and all the association related to that, it needs to be addressed and need to be studied for. I believe that we do have a 10 years data that it could be analyzed along with the parameters changed during the last 10 years or even 20 years to see the impact of climate change on raptors generally and imperial eagle especially.
Yes, thank you. It was my mistake because it was also mentioned in the discussion with some of you. Absolutely. Fortunately, or I'm not sure if it's the good word, but it seems that in many parts of the breeding range, the climate change will not affect negatively the imperial eagle in short term, as I understood the position of most of the people. But of course, it will change the situation. It can change the habitat. For example, in Hungary, in the last 15 years, the breeding cycle of the imperial eagle came earlier by more than 1 week. Which is definitely the result of the change of the climate. So it should be mentioned that particular studies to investigate the long-term effects or the medium-term effects of climate change should be addressed. So I put down this note. Thanks.
I would suggest to make a review on the wintering areas of the imperial eagle with main accent on the threats which the species faces there. Or just a literature review as a beginning.
Thank you. It could be also a literature review, but even if we put together this kind of satellite tracking data, it could be also another output or can be used in this kind of context to delineate more precisely the wintering areas and to focus on the threats there. It's involving the local expert, because it's always a mistake or a problem with these kind of Imperial Eagle conferences, that we are always focusing on the breeding populations, and even the experts from the wintering countries are even not present or only in low numbers. So we will mention this in the last point also. Thanks, Ivo. I wrote it down.
Just a short question. Did you miss poisons by mistake, or it was on purpose?
I put it under the persecution stuff, but we can include it separately as well, because poisoning can be a kind of direct persecution on raptors, but it can be accidental, of course. So I will highlight it.
Can I ask another question, please?
Yes.
Did anybody knew in which measure, I mean, the Eastern Imperial Eagle, it's a victim of direct human persecution regarding to raptors? And if so, can you give us some example of direct persecution against Eastern Imperial Eagle? Because it's somehow, in my opinion, it's somehow a secondary bird. I mean, it's not directly targeted by humans, like, for example, the northern goshawk or the peregrine falcons from the pigeon fanciers. But there is a really a threat for this species around her habitat as direct persecution from raptor persecution, like I mentioned before. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. So in the Pannonian Basin, the absolute primary cause of death is a persecution, and it's very hard to distinguish the persecution on predators or raptors in general and the persecution on imperial eagles, because, for example, the predator poisoning is usually targeting all kind of predators, at least in the Pannonian Basin, which are eating hares or pheasants, and the perpetrator doesn't care really what are the victims of the poisoning, but they are targeting the predators in general. So I think we should handle this as a persecution, even if the main targets are not always the imperial eagles, but they are also targets. And on the other hand, the shooting and the collapse of the nests intentionally by some people, and other things happen quite usually within the Pannonian Basin. I'm not sure about the other part of the distribution area. In Turkey, we found several signs of shooting. I guess it was shown in the Balkan Peninsula, in Macedonia, in Bulgaria. There are similar cases. So absolutely, the imperial eagle is a target of persecution incidents in most of its range, but it's very significantly among the regions.
Thank you again.
I just want to repeat something you already said. I think it's really important for the tracking data that we make the connection to the threats, and that we are not only analyzing the real tracking data, but for sure the fate of the birds as well. So that we keep in mind when we put this data together, that we have for sure the fate of the birds also put together, and this could be then used for the threats as well, or to check if we have a similar or mostly similar pattern then.
And the distribution of threats, because
for sure.
In space. Yeah, sorry, there are quite many questions. Just go one by one. Mitko?
One more point, maybe to summarize the genetic structure of the whole population.
So you mean it could be a complete different topic, like the breeding population dispersal, and put it as a main topic, the genetics. Absolutely, I agree on that. There are, and again, this is a topic where I think international cooperation could be increased a lot. There are quite significant studies in Hungary for already more than 20 years. There are significant studies done by the group of Todd Ketzner and his co-authors in Kazakhstan. There are more and more significant studies done by Igor and Luda and their team in Russia, and of course the Bulgarian. So we should definitely harmonize the methods again and try to make some kind of mapping of the populations. There are several possibilities. So I think we should set up a group of experts also on the genetics stuff, and maybe we will send out an email for this kind of expert groups, and we will open it for discussion. I agree. Thanks.
Yeah.
Really a component of that.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Ilker?
Yeah, may I add something? İlker Özbar from Turkey. I would like to mention that the wind farms and solar power stations are increasing in Turkey, and this also contributes increasing the electrocution and collision risk also. So maybe we can also mention this, and especially in trace part of Turkey, there are more and more wind farms planned. So maybe it could be a good idea to benefit from the satellite tagged distribution and their movements to help with the pre-construction studies of these planned wind farms, because there are some already planted wind farms, and I think they are being doubled in next 5 years. So it could be a good idea to benefit from the Bulgarian colleagues' information, and maybe we can also, I can work on it to get and mitigate these data into pre-construction work.
Thank you. Yes, of course, it can be incorporated with the breeding data, and this together gives a clear picture on the whole life stage. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to remember on something Johannes Hoeniger said in his presentation. It was about the impact, the possible impact of these modern agricultural rodenticides, if they have an impact on secondary poisoning of birds of prey and especially imperial eagle.
So you mean we should focus it as a target research to get a more clear picture on that issue as well?
Yes, if this is a topic or not. You know.
Yeah. I can add for this that in Hungary, there was a relatively new issue. Previously, the direct poisoning by carbofuran was the main problem, and still it is probably the main problem. But in the last few years, more and more carcasses were found which dead because of Brodifacoum poisoning, secondary poisoning of rodenticide. And it can be a much bigger issue than we know, because since we are listening to it, there was not a single raptor carcass from the southeastern part of Hungary where we couldn't detect quite high amounts of Brodifacoum on them.
Thank you very much. I'm not aware if there are any, let's say, specialists who work on imperial eagle in our part of the world, West Asia, North Africa. We're on the passage and the wintering areas, but it would be worth having at least, let's say, a satellite person from that region who can be on the working group. Maybe I don't want to mention somebody or propose somebody, maybe he's here or not, like Dr. Shubrak, who is on the scientific advisory committee for the CMS and Iowa. And he can be on this group from our part of the world, where he can, be the central focal point for our region for information for the wintering range, and he can share it on the group of experts.
Absolutely. So it's again connect to the wintering grounds and to the last question which I raised. I will tell it. Yeah, thanks. Any more comments on the threat part? Okay, so I think now we can try to answer the question of the colleague from Romania. He asked if we have any data on the interspecific relations with the Saker falcon and competition. I can start, but you can add your thoughts about it. In Hungary, the two species is inhabiting absolutely the same type of habitats in the country. There wasn't any particular analysis which would statistically compare the distribution of the two species. It is under preparation, so hopefully in the next half year we will do some kind of analysis, because the increase of the imperial eagle was completely different from the fluctuating population of the Saker falcon, and there are some hypotheses that the two species has an impact on each other, especially from the side of the imperial eagle on the Saker falcon. We can have a look on that. Personally, I think that there are many cases that the two species are breeding successfully next to each other. Even we had one case when they were breeding on the same tree. So I couldn't say that there is a very evident negative effect. And according to my opinion, it is not a big factor for the Saker falcon, and the opposite way also. But most probably they have effect on each other. Igor?
Ну, собственно, так, собственно, у нас в России, в Северном Казахстане, есть несколько гнездовых группировок балобана, которые тесно связаны с постройками орла-могильника. То есть орел-могильник является основным поставщиком гнезд для птиц, для соколов в этих группировках. Ну, как обычно, то есть наблюдаются какие-то единичные конфликты, когда балобан занимает гнездо могильника раньше, могильники прилетают и, получив, как говорится, от соколов по полной, начинают строить гнездо где-нибудь рядом. То есть бывает, что взрослые могильники добывают слетков балобана. Ну, у нас, наверное, вот по совокупности, по хищничеству всех орлов, беркута, могильника и степного орла, могильник, пожалуй, минимальный пресс оказывает, то есть больший пресс оказывает беркут, и потом на втором месте идет степной орел, а могильник на третьем месте, несмотря на то, что балобан и могильник чаще гнездятся вместе. Ну и надо сказать, что даже вот в этих группировках, где балобан предпочитал гнезда могильника, сейчас во многих регионах, особенно в горных, эта связь ослабевает, потому что все гнезда могильника, такие большие, удобные для балобана, они находились на вершинах деревьев. Во-первых, и могильник сам стал уходить с вершин деревьев в кроны, и балобан это начал делать раньше, и наблюдается тенденция к тому, что балобан перестает использовать крупные гнезда. То есть он перестает занимать гнезда могильника беркута, что связано с тем, что весной, когда птицы прилетают, эти гнезда покрыты ледяной коркой. Вот. И он выбирает для гнездования более мелкие гнезда коршуна и конюка, которые быстрее оттаивают, закрыты кронами, в них не образуются, видимо, зимой шапки большие снеговые, и балобан в них легко откладывается. Вот. Но при этом эти все гнезда разрушаются, это как бы несет урон балобану, низкий успех размножения из-за выпадения птенцов наблюдается. Но тем не менее вот эта связь балобан-могильник, она особенно в горных районах сейчас нарушена, а в северных вот равнинах начинают все больше и больше сокращаться. И конфликтных ситуаций между ними становится меньше.
Thank you. Well, one more comment on a direct conflict that out of more than 10,000 identified prey items of imperial eagles, and I think we have found one Saker falcon until now. So it very accidentally happens. Of course, we don't know if this Saker falcon was already had some injuries or anything else problems, but once it also happened. But definitely it is again not a cause which has effect on the population. Any other comments on Saker falcons? Just one thing about conflict between species. Just I wanted to add as an interesting point that in Hungary we have an issue within the conservation community that the increasing imperial eagle population raised some negative feelings in the people who are working with the great bastard conservation. So already there are some conflicts within the conservation community, and some people think that the imperial eagle has a significant effect on our great bustard population. It is again a topic which should be answered with scientific methods and not by emotions, we always tell. So we are trying to get answers on these questions also. Of course, if accidentally we would find any negative relations, it would be hard to handle. But anyway, the raw numbers didn't show it, because in the best imperial eagle habitats are the only increasing bustard populations. Any else comments, questions to the presenters? Yeah.
Thanks. I think it was the colleagues from Hungary who mentioned that they have been installing more than 1,000 artificial nests. If possible, we would like to know the results of this methodology. I mean, how many of them were taken by the birds, and if there was anything good to promote the usage of these artificial nets?
Yes, the primary aim of the artificial nest program was to accommodate Saker falcons. So many of the nest sites, especially which were set up in the 90s, were also for the Saker falcons, so not just for the imperial eagle. But in many cases, the imperial eagle was the target species. So we have the methodology how we did it. There are a little bit difference if you would like to provide it for a Saker falcon or for an imperial eagle. For example, the imperial eagle prefers large stick nests, and the Saker falcons seems to prefer a simple platform with gravel. So there is I think it was not again analyzed, but I think there would be a significant difference in the occupancy rate between these two type of artificial nests by the two species. Of course, both can accept the other, but they have a different preference on that. In general, you can say that the artificial nests only has a conservation value, I think, in those phases when the species in the colonization process. So it can help as a signal in a territory, and can have the proper placement of a nest of a new immature pair which is inexperienced and most probably could be unsuccessful in the first year. But with the artificial nest, you can help them to find the right place. Igor?
So regarding to artificial nests, I'm very interested to put some artificial nest in Romania, in the southeastern part. So can you help me, or can you help us in this direction, please?
Yes,
I'm interested in the type of the artificial nest, the materials, the measurements. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. If you contact us in Hungary or even the Bulgarian colleagues, I'm sure we are ready to help you in practical questions. Igor?
Ну, я хотел просто сказать, что на большинстве территорий могильник и балобан, они хорошо привлекаются в искусственное гнездовье, но у них совершенно разные их типы лучше использовать, поэтому там никакой конкуренции за искусственное гнездовье нет. У нас есть территория, на которой мы и те, и другие виды привлекаем, и нет пересечений. То есть балобан занимает одни постройки, специфически построены, особенно ящики, например, которые никак могильник занять не может, могильник и другие типы гнездовья.
Я обязан напомнить, что у нас осталось 7 минут, после чего мы должны покинуть помещение.
Okay, so the last question which we left is about the proposals for the location of the next Imperial Eagle Conference, and it's also a question to Igor if his organization is ready again to organize the two conferences together, and we are open for any proposals in which for the next 5 years we can prepare and we can make steps to organize the next one.
Ну, я думаю, что нет смысла разделять, то есть как бы у нас уже такой симбиоз сложился за последние годы, поэтому я думаю, что надо проводить также конференцию совместно и по могильнику, и по степному орлу, и по другим видам. Вот. Ну, насчет предложений, ну, тут уже высказывались в кулуарах, то есть есть предложение провести это в Индии, где имеются крупные зимовки обоих видов. Вот. И, кстати, падальщиков тоже есть предложение по Саудовской Аравии, как я понимаю. И вот есть вариант это сделать в Египте. Вот. Соответственно, в Египте это, наверное, лучше делать в пролет, а Саудовская Аравия и Индия это зимовка. Так что тут вопрос к принимающей стороне больше.
For me, all locations looks very nice, but of course we will need a local organizing committee who can do the work on the field. So if anybody from those countries or even from any other country would like to propose for organizing the next conference, just let us know, and we can start the thinking about the preparations.
Как насчет Турции?
Yes, in the last conference, Turkey was also one of the two options, and finally Kazakhstan won that contest. But maybe Ilker can add some comments about the local possibilities.
We will be very happy to host you in Turkey too, but we need to check about the opportunities and organization committee and so on. So I have to ask my NGO about that, but we would be very happy to host you in Turkey.
Thank you very much. So please, all of you who feels possibilities for that, contact Igor, because I'm sure that the Imperial Eagle conference will be just like a satellite event in that. So Igor and his team will be the main person to decide about the location. If there is not a big disagreement about this common organization of the conferences, but I think it is very logical. Okay. Any other final comments in the last few minutes? If no, then I would like to really thank all of you, especially the presenters, about these really great presentations. And I will put together these resolutions in a normal format and circulate among you. And I really hope that the recommendations and the aims which we set up will be already presented in the next conference as a result in 5 years. So thank you very much.